on Coleman. Count on Coleman. If your world is looking strange, you can count on Coleman for change.
Hi, Baton Rouge. Welcome to the Coleman's Media Center, where we strive to educate people. And so, guess what? Guess who I have with me this time? Dr. Jacqueline Mims, a licensed psychotherapist. And so, Dr. Mims have been on this journey a long time. I can say to you all, when I think of the guru of mental health and that psychotherapeutic stuff, I think of Dr. Jacqueline Mims. And so, Doc, why don't you tell the audience something about you, the Dr. Jacqueline Mims.
Well, thanks for inviting me, and then I'm excited to be here and sharing my anniversary with you.
Wow. Thank you, Mr. Rufus Mims.
Yes. So I'm dating myself because I've been in private practice and been practicing for over 40 years. Interestingly, my youngest son said to me today, he says, "Mom, you've been successful in what you do because you're passionate." And that really warmed my heart to not only hear him say that, but to recognize the passion that I have for what I do. So it's hard to describe exactly what I do because I do a little bit of everything. I am a licensed professional counselor, and I use the title psychotherapist, but I'm also a certified school counselor and a school psychologist, and I do a little bit of that too. I also engage in something called educational therapy that's not as popular here in the South, more popular on the West Coast and the East Coast, and that really focuses more on working with children who have learning disabilities or learning difficulties, attention deficit disorder, behavioral issues, and a specific learning disability. So I do a little bit of everything, and I don't get tired of working.
Yes,
I love
indeed.
what I do.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Talk to me about, we talk about mental health, and I know that the vast majority of people really don't thoroughly understand it, and there's a stigma regarding mental health. So talk to me about the stigmas and just how do you think people can really overcome that?
Well, I think it's better in 2025 than when I began my career, because even when I began my career, people questioned why I was choosing that profession, but it's more that not just simply that I chose the profession, but I really believe with all my heart, and there are people who can verify that these things occurred, that this was actually my call, and it stemmed out of my own life's experiences. So when we talk about mental health, we're talking about psychological and emotional well-being or health, right? And you've probably heard the term behavioral health. But when behavioral health encompasses, it's a broader term that doesn't just look at the psychological and the emotional, but it also considers the behavioral aspects. And there's a lot that I could say about that. But in terms of the stigma, when we hear that term stigma, it implies that there's a negative connotation associated with having a mental illness. But anybody could have one. The literature talks about, for example, anxiety being one of the most common mental conditions in the United States and across the world, right? Anybody could have an episode, right? It could be mild, it could be moderate, it could be severe. When we talk about severity, we're talking about those conditions that impede upon a person's ability to function. But all of us, the other day I was talking to another family member and talking about me doing a presentation in Colorado. And I said, to the person, do you realize that the person having attention deficit disorder, as the individual we were talking about, that attention deficit disorder is in the diagnostic criteria for mental illness, right? And so they got quiet, right? And I said, well, yeah, we diagnose attention deficit disorders based on a set of criteria that are listed in what I call our professional Bible, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual for Mental Health. And so the person really got quiet, as if not only were they stunned to hear it, but once again, as you said, that stigma that's associated. I think the more we talk about it, right, and helping people to understand that it is something that you have, it doesn't necessarily define the totality of who you are. I have a specific learning disability. That's hard for people to believe given what I've been able to accomplish. And there was a part or a time in my life where I really, one, didn't understand it, two, struggled with having the condition itself or even being identified as having the condition. But what became more important to me was the ability to overcome or the ability to cope and manage it rather than allowing it to control me, right? Wow. And so I think that as we talk more about it and helping people understand the nature of these conditions, right, where they become more comfortable with understanding not only the symptoms that are associated, how it impacts their lives, but developing those coping skills to be able to overcome or manage. Because one of the things I talk about is that there are some things we can't alleviate, we can't get rid of, but there are some things that we can minimize, and we can minimize the impact that it has on us.
Okay. Wow.
Right.
All right. And so when you're in this, and then a part of you is a part of what you do.
Yes.
And so when you talk about your diagnosis, talk a little bit about that. I want the folk to understand who you are, what it is that you've overcome, how do you manage, and then yet help folk with disabilities.
I think my ability to help people comes from my own experiences, right? So growing up back in my day, right, we didn't have special educations per se. We didn't have all of these classifications for special education. You know, you're just being lazy, and then you're always being compared to your siblings who are much better students. So I dealt with all of that. That affects my self-esteem. So when you're talking about dealing with your self-esteem, it's the loss of confidence, the loss of self-worth, and in many respects, the loss of self-respect, right? So I did not have the confidence that I walk in today, right? So I didn't have that level of confidence because of my disability. I apologize. I don't know how to work this phone. Okay, my children gave me this watch. And so I didn't walk in that level of confidence. And then I became the class clown, right? So I was a class clown, always joking to mask, if you will.
And minimize
the fact that I was struggling, in particularly in reading. So my disability is, or my deficiency is in cognitive processing. So there are times that I can see a word, I recognize the word, and I know you can understand this, yes, being an educator. So I have recognition, but I don't have recall, right? Because the brain is not processing fast enough for me to have the recall, the processing speed, which is one of those dynamics or elements that we use in measuring cognitive ability, intelligence. So if my processing is slow, right, then it's going to impact my performance. So think about that for a moment, all right? So I'm struggling with reading, and part of my struggling with reading is because, one, understanding what I'm seeing, being able to pronounce what I'm seeing, and being able to understand the meaning of what I'm seeing or what I'm reading, for example. So I know you got a background in speech pathology, right?
Right.
So when we talk about comprehension, think about that for a moment. When we talk about comprehension, the ability to read fluently,
Yes.
right? And comprehend what you're reading. So it impacted my comprehension. Why? Because I'm struggling with the fluency. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes, it does make
Okay.
sense, and it all works together. Yes,
and so when you
indeed.
think about that, especially the reading component, everything we touch in education has a reading component, even when it comes to math.
That's correct.
It has but I excelled in math.
And so that brings up a point about the children that we have in our schools, all of the systems. And so this is something that folk must be mindful of. Our educators must be mindful of this, and then be able to adequately serve the children. And then if they don't have a coping mechanism, if the children don't know what to do because of their deficiencies, then what they will do is anything. And then that's why they're so, they aren't, what do I want to say? That's why they're so aggressive, and they are really trying to cover up their inadequacies, as opposed to saying, hey, I don't know this and I need help with this. And that's big. That's big for children to do. Matter of fact, it's big for adults to do, Doc.
It is. And then for me to be able to articulate to you what's going on with me, I have to be able to understand it. And for me, I did not understand it, right? So how could I articulate? I know I was having a problem. I didn't know how to articulate that problem, but yet no one was addressing that issue. They was simply addressing my behavior. Mm-hmm. Did you catch that?
Yes, I did.
Right? So now I'm a behavior problem.
That's correct.
Right? I'm not a behavior problem. The issue was my learning disability, the deficiency in reading. And the deficiency in reading had to do with processing, cognitive processing. So think about what I said. To see a word, and I know what the word is, but the mind, the brain is not processing to recall that information from long-term memory into working memory so I can use it. Right.
Okay. All right. And so when children are faced with all of this, especially those adolescents, when they are faced with all of this, and then at home they don't have what they need in order to be able to surpass this, then that's when we see a lot of behavior issues.
Right.
And then talk to us about behavior, consequences, the whole 9 yards. See, because I like to always, a lot of time people want to talk about those children that are not doing right and what we need to do with them. But there's a population out there that's doing the right thing. And so I just like to be inclusive of all of our children. And then we know there must be consequences. I believe that's the big word with you there. And so teach us. Teach us.
So this can be an in-depth conversation in and of itself. So while I am familiar with numerous theoretical perspectives, having taught psychology, right, I do lean more toward cognitive behavior, and I lean more towards those two theoretical perspectives and the combination of them, because I can identify readily with them. So when we talk about cognition, we're talking about perception, we're talking about thoughts or thinking, we're talking about memory and even emotions, right? So there's a lot involved in mental processes. Well, the theory of cognitive behavior is that it is not the behavior that's influencing the cognitive processing, but it's the cognitive processing that is influencing the behavior. So if you want to change the behavior, you got to change the way a person processes mentally and how they process events. Right? So for example, the way we live in an environment today, unfortunately, where our children appear to be so angry. Yes. The way they talk to each other is so harsh, so aggressive, and they think that that's cool. Where did that come from? Right? So in my world, we say behaviors are either innate, meaning that you are born with that trait or characteristic, or you learned it. This is learned behavior. So where are they learning it from? Are they learning it from playing games? Are they learning from what they see on television, social media, reality TVs? Are they learning it from what they see in terms of how adults engage with each other? Because it's not innate, it is learned. So the behavioralist, from their perspective, is something that is learned can be unlearned. So the work comes in with us understanding what is the nature of the behavior. Why are you so angry? Who you mad with? If you had just stopped and asked me as a child, why was I behaving the way I was rather than just punishing the behavior? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
You're just addressing the behavior. You're not addressing the nature of the behavior. If you had done that, then perhaps I could have been on my road to recovery a lot sooner.
Yes.
So as a parent, and my husband and I had 6 children, and so as a parent, I took the perspective that I was always willing to hear my children's explanation, their side of the story. We come from a generation where children are seen, not heard.
That's correct.
Right?
That
you don't have an opinion.
None.
You don't have an expression.
That's correct.
And you might not even have no feelings.
Nothing.
Okay. All right.
Nothing, Doc.
Okay.
You ain't got
so
that.
I did not want to do that with my children. I wanted my children to be able to express what they were thinking, what they were feeling, and to express their perspective on why they did what they did. Right? And then, that was consequences, right? There were definitely some consequences. My older children could tell you a lot about some of those consequences, right?
That's it.
But here's the consequences must be meaningful to the organism. That's what the behavioralists believe. There's a theorist by the name of Edward Thorndike, and if you studied educational psychology, I would find it hard to believe that you never ran across Edward Thorndike. So Edward Thorndike created this theory called instrumental learning. Today we hear a lot about B.F. Skinner and his operant conditioning, right?
Yes.
But B.F. Skinner drew his theory from Edward Thorndike, right? So here's what Edward Thorndike, he had these 3 laws. He says the law of effect. Let me back up. First, the law of readiness. He says the organism must be ready to learn. If the organism not ready to learn, he or she is not going to learn, or it is not going to learn. Because oftentimes when we talk about organisms, we're talking about animals that have the ability to learn. That includes humans and other animals, right? So I say organism. The organism must be ready. If they're not ready, that means they're not open to change. And if they're not open to change, change is probably not going to occur no matter what you do externally. Did you catch that?
I caught that. I caught that.
All right. Then he talks about the law of consequence. So in the law of consequence, the consequences must be meaningful to the organism. That means that if the learning is meaningful to you, right, you see a reward, you see a value in it, then you are likely to continue to engage. Right?
Value.
Okay, it's valued. So I know we have a window of time, but when we talk about this learning, I'm talking about any kind of learning, It's not just academic learning. It's the things that you learn to do, even in how to communicate effectively with, how to listen, right? Here's one of my philosophies about that. I want to be heard. So if I want to be heard, I got to be willing to listen. If I'm not willing to listen, then why would anybody take the time to hear me? So because that is meaningful to me to be heard, then I'm going to give you the time to listen. Because it's meaningful to me.
Thorndike.
All right. And so as a result of that, if I'm satisfied and I find satisfaction in being heard, then I'm going to continue to do that same behavior. Quick to listen, slow to speak. That is a scripture, though.
That is. That was familiar.
And so then Thorndike goes on to say, so we have the law of readiness, we have the law of consequence, and then I just told you about the law of exercise. Because if it's meaningful to you, exercise means to continuously do something, to repetitiously engage in certain behaviors, right? So since it's meaningful to me, I'm going to exercise that because I find it to be meaningful.
It's going to get good to me.
Exactly.
Yes.
So
yes.
what I think what we're seeing is that and we say our children, but I just want parents and adults to look in the mirror.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's coming from somewhere.
Okay. All right.
I tell people.
Okay. I can remember my granddaughter is an adult now, but I can remember one time my son called me and said Raven had said something inappropriate, right? And then when he told me what she said, I said, well, she got in trouble at school. I said, what did she say? Mm-hmm. She called little boy a jackass. Well, she had just been here for spring break. She heard a mom, that would be me, call somebody a jackass. Okay. So if I said jackass, Raven thought it was okay to repeat jackass. Right?
Right.
So then she calls her daddy a jackass or somebody at school a jackass. She got that from me. But then he told me Raven had said something else. And I said, oh, no, she didn't get that over here in Baton Rouge. No, she got that out of Texas.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Driving in the car with you. Blasting rap music. Right? Singing to the top of your voice. Oh, Mama, we don't talk that way, but you are playing that music. So you're not talking that way, but you just introduced her to it. Right? She's learning that from the music that you're playing. Right? Understanding that brought a change. Right? It brought a change in the music that he listened to and the music that he allowed her to listen to. Does that make sense?
That definitely makes sense. You are what you eat.
Consequences got to be meaningful. And so in our world, we learn from B.F. Skinner that rewards are better than punishment, right? But too many times we are quick to do the punishment rather than the reward. Rewarding the appropriate behavior in an effort to see that behavior encouraged, right?
That's right.
So if I like smiley faces and the teacher gives me a smiley face, then it's likely that I'm going to engage in the same behavior so the teacher can do what?
Give me another
smiley
face.
Okay. If I like compliments, right, and you give me a compliment and it's satisfying to me, I'm likely, right? But that doesn't mean, Ms. Coleman, that I don't do the other part.
That's right.
The punishment.
That's correct.
Giving you something that is unpleasant.
Yes, that is correct. That all of that must be a part of it. And so we have parents out here, and I know that some are watching. What is it that you would, when we talk about mental health and we talk about parenting and we talk about our children, what is it that parents ought to be very mindful of? What is it that you would say to parents about parenting?
About parenting, you get out what you put in. Whatever you want out, that's what you put in.
So you telling me you can plant mustards? You can plant mustard seeds. Collards ain't coming up.
No, collards not coming up. Collards not coming up.
And what you get at the end is what you put in at that beginning.
At the beginning.
And all along the way.
Along the way. Yes,
and it's a process.
It's a process. I love to use this example, and I know you've heard me say it before. It's like going to an ATM machine. You punch in those numbers and you want to draw out $500. You know, doggone well, you didn't put $500 in. it's going to come back and say what?
Insufficient
Okay.
funds.
Okay. Insufficient. Think about the word insufficient,
Insufficient.
meaning that you didn't put enough in to draw out what you're now requesting. So all of my children are adults. I have adult grandchildren. But you know what I often say even today? I want out what I put in.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not willing to take nothing less. Now, I raise you to be independent and an independent thinker because that's something else that is taught.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
taught. And it must be learned. I can't make you independent. You have to learn to be independent. So I put in what was needed for you to be an independent thinker. So you're not a mama boy. You're not a daddy girl. You're a woman. You're a man, right? And an independent thinker, right? So please don't come tell me that somebody made you do something, because the first thing I'm going to ask you is, did you give somebody control over your mind or your body? You gave them control. See, that's a different way of processing. Just think about that for a moment.
Yes. Yes.
Because I want you to be able to think. So your response is, well, no, I didn't. But that's what you just told me. Because you just told me that you did something because somebody made you. The reality is that they can't make you.
And you know, Doc, what has been just today, something has been brought to my attention. Our young ladies, I'm concerned about our young ladies and our young men as well, and our parents and our grandparents, but our young ladies. And something has been brought to my attention about our young ladies. Yeah, they are angry, and yes, they don't know what to do when they are angry, and don't know how to express their anger, and they become violent. And then that leads on to something else. And if we do not take a look at those organisms, then you finish that for me, Doc, because you the lady.
That's the behavior that you're going to continue to see. We have to do more in teaching our children how to effectively communicate, right? I had a young man in my office today, an adult, in a career field, right? And he is up for termination. And so he was referred to me, right? And so as we were talking about what behaviors had occurred that led to the recommendation for the termination, it was like pulling teeth, right? For him to be able to articulate his thoughts, his feelings, and his behavior. That's a problem.
Big problem.
It's a problem. How to you learning? It's a learning process to be able to effectively communicate and express a complete thought.
And that's absent in many of the families. And so the children grow and grow and grow, and even they become adults, just as you just alluded to, and they do not know how to communicate. They don't understand no, and it's okay. No is, you better get you some no's.
Exactly.
And so they don't understand no, because I look at some of the males. The males don't understand no because their mamas never told them no.
See,
learn behavior. And so our young people and the females either, I tell you, I'm concerned about them. And the fighting, Doc, not knowing how to communicate and deal with stuff that's not good on the inside of them.
Well, learning how to manage disappointment? That's one thing. Right?
Yes,
disappointment.
Things
didn't go your way. It didn't go the way you planned. So how do you manage that? That's a learning skill to deal with the disappointment. The struggles that you might be dealing with today may be strengthening you for tomorrow. But if you don't understand that concept, you take what happened in this moment and you react in this moment, right? Something that I learned in my journey, in my walk with the Lord, that the actions that I take today, I may not see the consequences of the day today, but I am going to see the consequences. Does that make sense? I may not see them in this moment, but I am going to see the consequences.
Just wait.
Just wait.
Just wait.
Just wait.
Just wait.
So understanding that many of the challenges that we're dealing with in this moment wasn't because of something that just happened today. Right?
Right.
You asked me earlier about what are some of the things that we can do, right? I talked about putting in what you want out. Well, who do you want to be? That was a walk for me. And me deciding who I wanted to be despite what other people might have thought. I wasted too much time trying to debate with people about what they thought or said wasn't true. And when I woke up and realized I am wasting psychic energy, that's what Freud says, the mind only has a finite amount, right?
Okay.
And it can't be created and it can't be destroyed. So you're going to use that energy dealing with something that's insignificant that you can't change. What can I change?
And now repeat that, because that, yeah, we got to get that. Repeat that.
Freud says that the mind only has a finite amount of psychic energy, and it is the psychic energy that makes the mind go. That psychic energy cannot be created, and it cannot be destroyed. So Freud says if that psychic energy is dealing with anxiety, dealing with depression, dealing with whatever, it's not available then to you to be created because you're using it already on the anxiety and the depression.
So that's how we've lost a lot of our creativity. Because we are creative people. You know that, don't you? And so that's how we've lost our creativity. We've been majoring in the minors.
Okay.
And then that's how we began reaching for other little things, drugs and alcohol and illicit sex, all kinds of stuff because of that.
Yeah, it helps to mask that pain, that disappointment. Or what Freud might say, we try to repress those things down into unconsciousness because if we bring it into consciousness, it causes us emotional pain. So we're using all this psychic energy to repress rather than bringing those things gradually to the surface and dealing with who they are. I said to you that when I realized how much energy and effort I was putting in to trying to convince people of something, that I could not change their minds, I could not change their opinions no matter what I said. When I woke up and realized that, I took my energy and I decided I'm going to be me. I'm going to be me and I'm going to do me. And I'm going to be the best version of me that I can be. And even today, dealing with other folks' issues, right? I choose what I'm going to do with my psychic energy. And if I choose that this issue is insignificant, and I know this sounds harsh, the issue is insignificant and you insignificant, so I'm not going to give you no psychic energy. I need my energy.
For self.
Okay, for self, to be creative, to do those things that are significant to me and important to the people that are important to me.
And then when you do you and take care of you, then you can help others.
Okay.
But if you're broken, you can't help.
I can't help
You can't help.
Right?
You can't
and then
help.
I just used up my psychic energy. I cast my pearls among the swine. And so now I don't have no energy. I don't have no pearls because I just threw them away. I just threw them in the wind.
Yes, indeed.
Oh, okay. No.
And I love pearls. I love pearls.
No.
Yes.
I want mine.
Yes. And so, Doc, you must return. You've got to return because there's a whole sphere of discussion that has been left untouched here today. And so, yeah, you must return.
Anytime. I love talking about this because I love what I do.
Yes. And so, how about I want to thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing your expertise to better our communities, to better people, to better the environments, and people will become better. And so, with that being said, is there anything else that you want to say before we?
I have lived my life, not just my professional career. I have lived it in such a way that I don't want anybody to feel the emotional pain that I felt growing up. I don't want anybody to feel that. So it's important for me for people to not only understand who they are in this moment, but to define who they want to be and put their energies toward becoming who they want to be, who they say they are, right? And that becomes so important to you, right? That you can ignore what other people think and say.
And so if you'll tell the viewers out there how they can contact you and the name of your business.
So the name of my business is Eclectic Cognitive Behavioral Center. We are at 1733 Whitdale Boulevard in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. We do have an office in Vicksburg, Mississippi, and we have an office in Frisco, Texas. You can reach us by calling 225-924-2800.
So, Baton Rouge and others, you've heard it. And I say to you, stay tuned, because we have only just begun with the infamous Dr. And I always say the double doctor because she has 2 doctorate degrees. And so to return, so just stay tuned and ready to hear the rest of the story. And I want you to remember, you can count on Coleman.
Count on Coleman. Count on Coleman. If your world is looking strange, you can count on Coleman for change.